Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
If you stayed past 2023, what will be the timeline?
I get hit by a truck tomorrow. That's a reality. I figured that out a long time ago, too.
And with that, we are back with Eye on the Hawks. It's been a week, and what a week it has been. Before we get into the pleasantries and everything of our coverage today, Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell, let's also go back to January 2010, where Kirk has used an analogy like that before.
The coach knows anything can happen.
Food poisoning, I don't know, anything, somebody get hit by a bus or something like that, but
That is Jordan Loparina, former KRUI sports reporter, in the background there with the yeesh reaction, which I think we all did. You might have missed a young and optimistic Mitch Fick in the high shot there for a little bit. We were all taken aback a little bit by that, but hey, yeah, live every day to the fullest because, as Kirk Ferentz says, there's automobiles out there apparently.
Look both ways before you cross the street.
Look both ways, all that stuff, and certainly maybe feeling a little bit blindsided by Monday's news where we start Eye on the Hawks this week. We'll get to Northwestern and the novelty of playing at Wrigley Field and everything that comes with that here in a bit. But, of course, it's the beginning of the end of the Brian Ferentz era in Iowa City. The announcement Monday that the program will be moving on from him after this season, after the bowl game. That statement coming from Beth Goetz. But here is Kirk Ferentz and Beth Goetz on the news and the announcement that the eldest son of the longtime head football coach in Iowa City will not return in 2024.
No, I can just say that, my policy has typically been to evaluate everything, players, coaches, all that, postseason, because in season we've got a lot on our plates. And, that's just kind of been the nature of it. And it's been that way probably since I got started full-time in 81. There's just not enough time in the day. So that's where our focus is. Everything you do is precious in terms of time relations. And, so to me, it's a better time. It's a less emotional time. It's, I can give you a lot of reasons why I've done it that way. But, it really doesn't matter. It's really not significant right now because we are dealing with something that we have to deal with, and we will. I mean, obviously, we have a biological relationship, and I'm very fond of him, but I've had a lot of strong relationships with a lot of people that worked here, and that's one of the beauties of what we do. So if this were anybody on our staff that fell into this category, I'd feel bad about it. But I'm guessing they would encourage us to keep moving forward, too, and that's it's just what you have to do.
At the end of the day, both Coach Kirk Ferentz and Brian Ferentz, I am 100% confident, just like they always have, that their focus is on those 120 guys in the locker room. That's been unwavering over time. It's been unwavering that I've watched week in and week out, and I guarantee you that's what they're thinking about right now.
So that was all the reaction afterwards. Several references to moving forward, moving ahead, 4 games left in the regular season. Beth Goetz there, you just heard at the very end, the interim AD, referenced her statement that came out Monday, going to that for several different questions. So here's a look at the statement itself. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, this is where you get all the visual stuff on the Iowa's News Now Facebook page or YouTube channel when we go live, and then Eye on the Hawks on Twitter, of course, for all the content as well. But this is what that statement says. I had it pulled up and then I clicked out of it. Of course I did.
I've got it if you want me to read it.
Yeah, but basically the first 2 lines were, anyone who loves Iowa football recognizes both the success and challenges that brought attention to our program this season. Our struggles on offense, coupled with the offensive coordinator's contract, 7 wins, 25 points a game, we've talked about it, make this a unique situation. After conversations with head coach Kirk Ferentz, Coach Brian Ferentz, and President Barbara Wilson, I, Beth Goetz, informed Brian that our intention is for him to be with us through the bowl game, but this is his last season with the program. Making this known today, Monday, is in the best interest of the program and its loyal fans. It provides clarity during this pivotal time in the schedule.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from that statement is a lot of people keep asking me, and they were asking before the statement was even made about, like, well, would Brian stay on? Would he be the O-line coach? Would he be with the team in some capacity? But the fact that she says in there his, what does it say exactly?
Last
season with the program, I think, is important to know. Like, he's not going to be back with Iowa football in any sort of capacity, I don't think, going forward.
I think it's important to notice, too, that the second last line or last paragraph, it's not my practice to be involved in assistant coaching decisions and certainly not to make public such a change during the season. She doesn't say it in the
There's
release.
no explanation really after that. It's
Yeah.
kind of a standalone sentence.
I
and then
think
it's-
since he's Kirk's son, and we heard it last year when Barta was, he directly responds to the reports to the AD, and the fact that just like lost my train of thought, but that's the fact. I think that the reason she is involved. Otherwise, if it wasn't Kirk's son, she wouldn't be making this decision. Yeah. It'd be up to the head coach.
And Kirk brought that up several times, and you heard him there. the practice, bless you.
Excuse me.
'Tis the season for
Carry on.
for colds and whatnot. That this isn't something he always does, and even the language going back to I think was it August when Beth had her first kind of presser as officially interim after Gary's retirement was official in August. Said we'll reevaluate at the end of the season. I mean, that was her answer to those questions about the contract. Something changed at some point. There was a question directed to her, and I think we've talked about it. You asked me earlier this week, did losing to Minnesota, was that, and maybe the factor of going into the bye week and a lot of time to hear a lot of different voices all over the place, does that have some sort of effect of, okay, well, we at least need to say something now? Is it different if you're 7-1 and Cooper's getting dark horse Heisman hype because a certain play didn't get called back? I don't know.
This is an interesting question I brought up to David Eichholt on our Eye on the Hawks TV edition. I asked him the same thing about, like, if that touchdown from Cooper to Jean counts and Iowa wins that game and they're 7-1, are we having the same conversation? And he said yes. He thinks that this was a move that was going to be in place regardless. And I think that, again, it got leaked out, but I think he made it seem like his belief was that this was a decision that was already going on and they were going to be having that conversation either way.
So he believes Monday the release was going to come out 7-1 or 6-2?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
interesting. Yeah,
That's immensely interesting to me.
He wasn't. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I was in the booth when we were playing. Did he say that based off his reporting, he knows that, or is that just was his gut feeling?
It seems like he. I mean,
we never know.
At any rate, it's somebody's gut feeling, because they are 6-2, they are what they are. But that was his gut feeling. Is that it seems like this is a decision that was going to be in place, and they were going to be doing it no matter what. Just because even if Cooper returns that touchdown, Iowa's offense was historically terrible against Minnesota, and so it's not like that changes the outcome of how well the offense had been doing. And so, his idea was that I think that, again, this was a decision that was going to be made after the season, and maybe there had been some leaks that were coming out that they maybe were kind of forced into having to make this statement right now, which was probably not what they wanted to do, but they just kind of had to with how it was coming out. So that was not ideal, and not the way that they wanted to do it, but his belief is that they had already made their mind about the offense and changing the coordinator, win or lose that Minnesota game.
He made a point too, and it's such a a lot of people are making this point. It's such a different age in college football when the portal starts in December.
Yep.
Only lasts for 30 days now. They changed that. They shortened it. If you wait till the bowl game to make any changes, and you're trying to attract recruits, you're trying to attract offensive portal guys, they're all going to be gone by the time January hits, when you pretty much think that Iowa's going to be playing a bowl game late December, early January. So, people questioning the timing, the new aspect of college football, I think, you have to do it before all that happens, if you're going to do it.
I believe he said December 4th is the day that the portal
right.
opens, I think.
Sounds right.
But that's what he said. He's like, this team needs to have something that's going to be not only drawing portal transfers, but keeping people here. This team needs to know that there's going to be a change moving forward. If you're an offensive player, that there's going to be something that happens that's going to make a change to this program going ahead.
Yeah,
I got one comment in the live chat. The rumors were swirling around the day before the statement came out. But we did talk to David, who was one of the first to publish a story, I believe, to break it. He said he was hearing stuff on Saturday, and that he confirmed it on Sunday.
Yep.
And I believe the statement came out Monday, right?
That's correct.
So those are the kind of the timelines of at least things we can know.
I didn't ask David who his sources were, just because I let his sources be his sources. But that's what he made it sound like, is that he was starting hearing those rumblings on Saturday.
I am of the belief that this was I think this was his last season, regardless.
For sure.
Right? And we talked about that. I think one of our first episodes. Yeah. I think it was just a matter of when do you reveal it, and it just feel it would feel so weird to announce it after a 7-1, like a thrilling win with that play. And, oh, by the way, it's Monday and we're back to it, and this is Brian's last year. It would just feel so strange. Yeah. I can't help but feel that this was the opening to like, okay, we announce it now. And obviously that goes against, as Kirk alluded to several times yesterday, 25 years, 24 years of off seasons. This is how we've done it. But yeah, to the side of recruiting and what you have to do for the transfer portal, I think it was something needed to be said maybe from that side. I don't know. Yeah. It's an immensely difficult situation.
And again,
and it was always going to be.
The question I kind of posed to Dave was more about the decision versus making it public. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing here is that they probably would have wanted to keep it within the program. Like, okay, the players know and our recruits know that it's going to be a different offensive coordinator next year. But
this day and age, that's just...
We talked about that too, of like, it'd be how tight can you keep that down? Because all you've done is change the distraction, in my opinion, from, boy, is this guy going to be here too? Okay, well, now he's not going to be here. And now you've got, I think Jack Leto referred to him as a lame duck offensive coordinator, which, I mean, he's around for at least 5, maybe 6 more games. And
the interesting question, I think, thrown in my head is, does this fire the guys up? You know, you do know you've seen a lot of at least former players like Brian. He seems like a nice guy. The offense has, you know, for all my years being a Hawkeye fan, which is only about 2 decades or so, it's not like there's a lot of people out there with longer experience.
That gives you tenure.
I've never felt these past 3 years just like we should just punt it on first down. You know, I was never had this explosive outside of Brad Banks's year, and Drew Tate, even Drew Tate's year.
2010 team was a top 25 offense.
Yeah,
people forget about it.
Yep,
it was 7-5 because the wins losses kind of define everything.
Yep,
right?
The ones in between though, the seasons in between, it's always the defense that propels you. But I've never felt this bad about like just going out there and watching it, and I think that's kind of the tipping point.
It's the unfortunate thing with this, when you zoom out from the business of football and the metrics and the statistics, is there is a bit of a tragic story in here of, in 2012, Brian Ferentz comes back into his hometown program, a program that he almost lost a leg playing for in 2004 and went through this incredible rehab and comes back and plays and was beloved, I think, by a lot of fans for just that grittiness. And he's the coach's kid. He's, to quote Kendall Roy, the eldest boy, and comes back and is, by all measurements, a fantastic offensive line coach. They had the best offensive line in the country in 2015. They win the award named for Kirk's #1 mentor in Joe Moore. Moves to the OC position, 17, 18, 19, has Nate Stanley as quarterback, has a couple NFL tight ends, a couple NFL wide, has players in place that gets some numbers, and then these last couple of years, it's just been tough. The attrition with statistics at quarterback and has fallen off, and this was always going to be a difficult spot when it's the coach's kid in this position, and to avoid the nepotism, the AD is his superior, and there was going to be if it doesn't go well, and because I imagine the ideal was like Brian's going to be here until Kirk is, and it's going to be, they'll ride off into the sunset together. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in the sunset.
Favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Great movie. But when it doesn't happen, you get to this scenario where it's just going to be awkward and it's going to be, it's sad. A dad had to go to the podium yesterday and deal with the notion that something that was always going to be out of his hands is out of his hands. And it's not that storybook ending that I think ideally every Iowa fan would probably have wanted. Like, they don't want to see their team struggle. They don't want to see this guy who's helped the program for a quarter century struggle. Like, it's just a tough situation, and it was always going to be if it turned this way. And that's the kind of sad part of the human part of it. It's just like it's tough to get those really brutal reminders sometimes of like, oh yeah, they're not just stat sheet guys.
Brian was literally there from day one. I mean, I think about that video that came out a few years ago when Kirk was celebrating his anniversary with the program, where you look back on the very first day that he was introduced to the program, and he has all of his kids out there with him. And
they've grown up within the program.
Brian's out there with him.
And Brian's relationship with the city of Iowa City is probably different forever. I mean, he's kind of getting run out of town in a lot of ways, and It's tough. Now
He'll
the
get a
question.
job somewhere else, though. I'm sure.
Hey,
I was wondering if
he's a great O-line coach. He will not be unemployed long.
I'm sure he's going to have success doing that, at least that somewhere. Because that line was great in 15.
Yep. And obviously, there's plenty of work to be done. Hence all the moving forward talk yesterday. A lot of talk about what does this mean for Kirk, who's still got a few years under contract and is really close to climbing up some all-time Big Ten lists. He was asked yesterday, and so was Beth Goetz, about his future in Iowa City.
My plans are like they always are, to worry about this game and bigger scale, bigger picture for these 4 games. And that's where my focus has been this entire season. Obviously, it's more than 4 games a week ago or 2 weeks ago. That's what I think about. And that's each and every year. It's been pretty consistent, just like the other things I referenced.
Is there a concern that after 2023 that you might lose Kirk now that you're dismissing Brian?
The concern anytime you would have to replace a Hall of Fame coach in any sport is real. Obviously, we've got more than our fair share here at Iowa, and you want to keep them here as long as you can so they can continue to lead our great programs.
You heard some guttural sound in the background there, which is a great opportunity to praise Owen Sebring for weaving shoulder and arm day into Beth Goetz's gaggle presser there, because he had to run over from the press conference itself and then Simba the camera over the scrum and ended up, that was one of those transitionary shots, but it was a great soundbite from Beth just about what do you do if you have to replace a Hall of Fame head coach, and that was her answer. So hence the video and the guttural noises in the back, but kudos to you always getting the job done.
Yeah, I think that was the most aerial I've ever had to go on a camera shot.
That was,
I was
You're that tall.
fully extended having to go up there.
Definitely,
so.
yeah.
I would have struggled there.
You sore today?
Sometimes. What's that?
Sore today a little bit? Did you
I'm living.
stretch?
I'm living, you know.
So the question is, and it is a somewhat serious one, do you guys think this changes Kirk Ferentz's timeline? Is Kirk Ferentz the head coach of the University of Iowa in 2024?
I mean, all I can do is look through like what I would feel like, and if I think I was Kirk Ferentz and this move got made, knowing that when they signed up, this was gonna be how the situation would be. Brian would report to the AD just because of state nepotism laws. I personally, I wouldn't want to stay around if I felt, and I think Kirk feels that this decision was like he didn't want this to happen, and it happened. At the same time, I think, like he said, he appreciates the chain of command. He's a grown man. He's a great coach. He loves all the players on the team. I could see him sticking around. I don't think the offense is going to change, though, if he moves. And that's what fans wanted. That's the irony of it. I don't think it was Brian. It was the philosophy, conservative, ball security. Obviously, every coach wants that, but the risk averseness of all the offensive stuff and the predictability, I don't think that's going to change no matter who they bring in. Could you imagine if they bring in a hotshot offensive coordinator? That would be even less than Kirk staying in my mind, and probability-wise.
Yeah, I would have to think that it is within the program hire. Who that is, there's a few names that people would speculate. Probably chief among them would be LeVar and John Budmeier. But yeah, I would imagine. So I mean, to answer Mitch's question, I don't know. I felt very 50-50 on it because I feel like, yeah, I agree with you, Mike, that it's this is just such a. I mean, you could tell Kirk was not happy with the way that this whole thing has been handled, and having to announce this midseason, he was not happy about that at all. But he also maybe doesn't want to go out on a note like this, where there's just a lot of kind of sour feelings around the program, from a public perception right now, just about how things have going. But he also doesn't care too much about public opinion, so who knows? I mean, I would say that again. I trust David Eichelt's opinion just because he has a lot of he has a lot of takes that end up being correct, and he felt pretty confident that Kirk is going to be back next year. He seemed like he was pretty lower on that.
I'll actually answer the question. I kind of think he doesn't, and part of this is just going to his press conferences, and maybe this is, and I didn't last year or the year before, so maybe, and I've heard he's done this as he's gotten older, where he just always, and I don't say gripe, but he always takes shots at the way things in college football are changing. And it seems like he's not on board with them. Wouldn't it just be hey, you've got you've made a lot of money. Maybe you want to spend time with your family, and all the NIL portal, all that stuff that you didn't have to deal with for 20 years.
Big Ten expansion. He's always talked about not wanting to do West Coast road trips for non-con, and now you have to do it for conference. I don't know if that changes anything.
One or two trips a year out there.
What do you think, Mitch?
Yeah.
I don't know if he knows. I mean, I'm sure he's just
That's fair.
This is a lot. It's a lot to take in. I know he doesn't. He says it every presser, and I think the more you hear stuff, maybe sometimes the more you tune it out. He nonstop. He's one of the winningest coaches in Big Ten history. He's 2 away from tying Bo Schembechler for 3rd all-time Big Ten wins for a head coach. Woody Hayes, he's 13 away. You can do that possibly sometime next year if he sticks around, if he goes on a nice run. He doesn't care about that stuff.
Yeah,
he cares about people.
Say.
And I think he continuously talks about anytime, hey, you've won 200 games. What does that mean to you? Oh, surrounded by good people. And he's just nonstop, and he's always referencing the past. And you brought up Coach Fry. Yes, you talked about the military drawing that line in the chain of command. He said that was from John Hayden Fry. Didn't say Coach Fry. Didn't say Hayden Fry. John Hayden Fry. He is powered by people. He is of the belief. And this is all very zen. Like, people don't give Kirk Ferentz credit for being zen, of just like recognizing something, saying we have to move on. What's done is done, but just being powered by people and standing on the shoulders of those who have helped you get there. I think for him, a coach is a coach is a coach, and I think that's a tough thing to walk away from, even in the middle of this, of having a son taken away in some sense of those words. But at the same time, we talk about it over and over, how many times you've seen the emotions come out in the locker room after a big win. He loves these players, and I don't think people sometimes see the on-field product, and I don't know if they fully understand that in a loss, and then you see the win, you're like, oh yeah, like this means the world to him, and these guys mean the world to him. Yeah. I wonder if that, him not wanting to go out this way, so to speak, and the passion he still very much at 68 years old seems to still have for this job, and the success, however it may look sometimes, he continues to have. I wonder if that brings him back, but I don't know if he knows right now. Yeah. I'm sure this is a haymaker to him.
For any Hawkeye fans, I mean, I'm sure there are Hawkeye fans out there who say, like, yeah, I'd be happy to see Kirk Ferentz gone. I think that they hopefully know as well that means Phil Parker would
talked about that.
Very likely be gone as well. I don't know if Phil stays on if Kirk is gone. And so
the regime changes completely when it ends.
This defense that is legendary, that is, annually, one of, if not the best defense in all of college football, maybe that changes if Kirk leaves and then Phil Parker leaves as well. So,
well, if Kirk leaves,
knows that there's going to be a big shakeup as well.
Well, if Kirk does leave, I know Phil has never left for a head coaching job. He's been the head defensive coordinator for 10 years now.
Phil's never been brought up as the head coaching candidate.
Maybe
and
he's
you'd
not.
Wonder.
Sometimes,
you'd wonder.
People know it's a more of a CEO role. They know they wouldn't do that. He's really good at this.
Yeah.
If him or LeVar, and people have talked about LeVar taking over at some point, he probably could have gone somewhere. Would he stay then if LeVar's the coach, or if feels, you know what I mean? Like if it's handed down in the program, but then again, you got to think Beth's going to look at every possible option if there's a head coaching vacancy.
Yeah. I've always just kind of assumed, maybe it's wrong of me to assume that it's an age thing. Like LeVar is younger than Phil, and so it's like
he's 60, 61.
Yeah, and so he would maybe have a lot more years to potentially be with the program. We've had such two consecutive, very long-term coaches with the Hawkeyes, and so LeVar could step in and be the next guy who's around with this team for 20-plus years, possibly.
Yeah, 2 coaches in basically the span of half a century. Yep. And right now, by all accounts, it's still Kirk Ferentz, and no reason to think otherwise until it's otherwise. But enough on all that stuff. Plenty of discussion over the last week. We've had a lot of time to think about and stew over opinions and insights and analysis on that. We will get into the football game because they are still playing football at the University of Iowa here for the rest of the 2023 season. We'll get into the Northwestern game right after this.
Bauman's has been selling quality clothing for over 100 years. We carry a wide selection of men's and women's clothing. We recently expanded to offer a great selection of shoes and accessories. We have the area's best selection of both big and tall and can outfit anyone from the farm to the office to a casual night on the town. Bauman's is a proud family-owned business, and we're excited to continue the tradition of quality clothing and unmatched customer service since 1909. Visit us for all your clothing needs.
All right, so we do have football to play on Saturday in Chicago at Wrigley Field. Just a typical, normal, every Saturday in the Big Ten, going to the friendly confines as Iowa takes on Northwestern, 2:30 kick on Peacock. Again, that first experience on Peacock I thought was a really good product. So,
All right.
Those people that have been.
I also
complaining
heard
about the
yesterday,
extra-
this has nothing to do with football or the game, so I'm delaying the football talk even more, that you can watch Five Nights at Freddy's on Peacock as well.
Is that,
That's
so
on
you've
theaters.
got that going for you.
have you watched that?
No, I haven't, but I'm going to.
Also, 30 Rock and all your favorite NBC programming.
Mitch and I will bring you a lot of 30 Rock
Boy,
references.
yeah, it's
Fans.
it's a wonderful show. So here's Northwestern at a glance. Ben Bryant, the Cincinnati transfer who is starting at quarterback, he's out. We bring in Brendan Sullivan, same hometown as Brent Metcalf. Hawkeye fans, Davis and Michigan led them to a state title a few years back. He has stepped in the last 3 games as starter for the Wildcats. Also started against Iowa last season. He's been pretty nice. 572 pass yards, 4 TDs, 1 pick, and 3 starts, including a really nice win against Maryland last week. He was really something there. They've got also, I'm going to screw up last name if I don't have it. It's gone. Kurtz is their wide receiver. He had a big game against Minnesota. I think he had 10 catches for 200 plus and 2 touchdowns. He's like the 7th leading receiver in the Big Ten right now. The defense is where you got a couple real good playmakers. You got Bryce Gallagher, 70 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. Xavier Mueller, 55 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. Both those numbers, 2 of the best in the Big Ten. They can get after the quarterback and get after, again, pretty much everybody. We're spoiled with Jay Higgins being the only guy in triple digits. They got some dudes there also filling out the top 10 in the conference. Kirk Ferentz looks across on the other sideline, or next to him, more on that in a little bit as well, and sees a really good football team that's really starting to come into their own after everything they dealt with in the offseason.
2 things that really kind of stand out to me. If you look at last week's game against Maryland, they had a 7-point lead. Maryland took the ball down to the 1-yard line, had 3 shots from the 1, and Northwestern got 3 stops, which is pretty impressive, pretty difficult to do. And then more impressively, Northwestern took the ball and drove it, whatever it was, 77 yards, and got a field goal out of it. So basically went from Maryland had a chance to tie it up, and next thing you know, Northwestern's got a 10-point lead and really took control of the game from that point. So I think that says a lot about him.
And, of course, led by David Braun, the former UNI assistant, who has gone from just trying to hold everything together to maybe making a case that he's the guy to be in Evanston. It's been really impressive, especially the last few games. They come back against Minnesota, which, boy, that's going to be a thorn in the side of Minnesota's push for the West.
They were down 31-10 in the 4th quarter. Northwestern was that game, and they came back and tied up. That was the day against Iowa played Penn State. That game was wild. The ending was.
It was really, really crazy. But again, they got players and everything they've been through to get to 2-3 in the Big Ten. Maybe they're not going to win the West, but this is a team you don't want to play in November. It feels like they seem like a really. They're hitting their stride at the right time. You heard what they did against Maryland there to get a stop and then go down and score. Boy, as if Northwestern already wasn't a thorn in Iowa's side the last 15 years, here they go again.
Yeah. I'm so looking forward to this game on Saturday for so many reasons. Number one, we just got a chance to shoot a women's basketball game on a football field, and now we get a chance to shoot a football game on a baseball field. Just the life experience of doing this is going to be a blast. This is, again, for the final 4 weeks of the season, with everything going on with the Iowa program right now, this is a chance to see, again, what they are made of. If this team still has Big Ten West aspirations, if they can bounce back after that Minnesota loss. I mean, just as we discussed last week, just such a crushing way to go into the bye week. How do they respond? Do they respond this week by going out there and laying an egg, or do they go out there and respond by showing, like, hey, we want to really play for our offensive coordinator who's going to be gone at the end of the season, and we still have aspirations of playing in Indianapolis, which, again, they are still in the driver's seat as of right now after Wisconsin lost.
This is a Northwestern team that everyone thought was going to possibly go winless, like in the Big Ten.
I mean, we thought they maybe get, 2 wins this year?
Their over-under on the season was 3.5. They've already gone over with 4 games, and
I thought there'd be a little solidarity, and I think I maybe said they'd go 3-9, 4-8, but they have turned into we kind of poked or looked at the Howard score, 23-20, which was Sullivan's first start. Wondered what's going on. I thought Maryland's a good team. They've hit a rough patch, but that's a great win.
I read a Northwestern blog article earlier today. The Northwestern still actually has. They don't control their own destiny, obviously, but they can still win the West.
Just about.
Yeah, sure.
They would need to win out. Obviously, they'd beat Iowa and I believe Wisconsin in the process.
Didn't 6-3 win the league last year?
Yeah, they need 1 loss from Minnesota, who plays Ohio State. So the only thing they'd really need help with is 2 losses from Nebraska. I mean, obviously, I don't think Northwestern's going to win out
Nebraska
4 games.
just beat them, was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2
17
weeks ago, 17-9. This team also, there's a lot of parallels. Like, their quarterback got hurt, another one comes in. Now that third game, and you mentioned the Howard game, it was 23-20, and Howard's like not, FCS, it's whatever. But he's really grown into his own with the stat sheet. I don't have it on me, but last week he threw for a lot, and Maryland's defense isn't that great. But Maryland's not a bad team.
He carved him up, man.
Yeah. So
that's best game he's played in college probably, and he wasn't terrible in Iowa City last year.
Yeah.
It's a team that's going to be good. You just drew the parallel of a hurt quarterback, and the backup comes in, one that had starting experience. Of course, we've talked time again. Deacon Hill did not have any starting experience coming in to fill in for Cade McNamara. Hadn't really played football since 2020 just because of the pandemic and redshirting and so forth and whatnot. A lot of talk during the bye in the fan base and on the internet of whether or not Joe Labus was going to get a go. Kirk was asked very directly by Chad Lystico from the Des Moines Register about Deacon's metrics and what that maybe says about QB2 and QB3 in Joey Labus and Marco Lainez. Kirk taking a little exception to the word used to describe the backups in some way, and here's what he said about everything.
Chad Lystico, Des Moines Register again. There's a metric out there that Deacon Hill is 160th out of 160 in turnover-worthy plays. That's, interceptions, fumbles, balls tipped, all that stuff. So how do you equate that, him still being QB1 with such a high turnover possibility when he's in the game? And or are the other guys just that bad?
Well, yeah, those are your words, not mine, certainly. I wouldn't say ever guys are that bad. I mean, they're playing major college football a bit. Yeah, we go through, we've been evaluating since the start of spring practice. And, you look at the body of work. We, believe it or not, at least I think we know a little bit more about our guys because we see a lot more. By you saying somebody else might be bad is suggesting the other guy's bad too. So I don't look at it that way. We're looking with trying to grow guys that haven't played very much and see how well they can move forward here and how quickly they can move forward.
It is an interesting scenario, and this is a business, and we live in a society. I never thought I'd use the meme term, but where either there's really no middle ground. It's either someone is the greatest we've ever seen, or they're trash, they're garbage, they suck. And so we define everything as like good or bad. To Kirk's point, I don't think anybody who's playing Division I football, Power 5 football, Group of 5 football, wherever, is bad at what they do. You know what I mean? Like they did something.
It's all relative to college football.
It's all relative.
When you call
and
them bad.
Yeah. So there's that. What do you guys think about the decision to stick with Deacon? Like I tend to empathize with the fact that he's learning on the go in a very difficult situation where he's lost his top 2 targets. Yeah. Again, injuries happen everywhere, yada, yada. Did you guys think there might be a lean the other way? It still sounds like there's very definitive Deacon, Joey, Marco.
I think game by game it changes. I mean, if he comes out and the offense struggles in the first half, then I think Joey should go in the second half. And
even this Saturday?
This Saturday,
Yeah.
I mean.
Do you think that will happen?
Do I think that will happen? No. I just, it's so hard to balance because I get that he's relatively young, Deacon, with experience-wise. This is his first year throwing college football passes. But, I mean, you look around the country, that happens all the time, and players are able,
Not everyone's Dante Moore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True.
That's...
And I think the fact that Iowa already doesn't rely on their offense, that, we win with their special teams and defense. So just to go back on what's the upside, what's the downside? Is he going to turn the ball over? Well, Deacon just did that. We almost won the game last week.
And that was his big message yesterday.
Yeah.
More than moving forward was just he had a great line of only Stanzi can get away from this rule. Ricky Stanzi throwing pick sixes of we got to protect the football. And yeah, that's in 2 losses they've turned it over 7 times.
So I don't think that Joe is like the answer, or I'm like, oh, I know more than the coaches. I think he's gonna be better. I just don't think when I'm looking at this offense, I see if I saw Joe play one game, in the Music City Bowl, and he had a limited offense there too, just game plan wise. I don't think it'd be that much difference. So I guess then why switch it all? Going back and forth in my head, but
yeah. It's true. I guess I could kind of see the same way, like that there's not going to be much difference there. I really and honestly believe that, like, if Deacon doesn't get it turned around in the next 2 games, that it's going to go to Joe for the last couple games of the regular season. Just if he has, any turnovers, if he's going sub 120 yards in these next 2 games, it's just like, we got to figure something out at offense and try to get something going. Because, yes, Joey's numbers in the Music City Bowl, I've got him pulled up 14 to 24, 139 yards, 1 touchdown. Not like overwhelming numbers, but like for an Iowa quarterback, boy, those would sparkle in any of the games on the schedule this year. So at some point, if there's a couple more games of what we've seen in the past few games, then you gotta think about making a change.
I'll take those numbers. I did some number crunching here. So 14 to 24, 139, touchdown. If you take away, like Deacon has had, top 2 tight ends, top 2 targets, he was 6 of 16 for 47 yards. He was 3 or 4 in that opening drive. 4th down was a missed pass to Laporta. A couple of those passes were nice. He had one to Deontay that was like right in there. 5 of 7 was, I believe, the second to last drive of the game. And then the scoring drive was the one where he goes, it's 27 yards to Laporta, but Laporta catches it like 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. The ball had a Mario Superstar in it, and he goes and all the way through. And then it's the screen out to Lachey. So the key element, I think, in all this, because again, 6 of 16, 47 yards sounds like a Deacon Hill stat line. Mm-hmm. He didn't turn the ball over, though. And I think that will be I don't know if it'll be a yardage thing of like, well, Deacon's not breaking triple digits in throwing. If he turns the ball over 3 times against Northwestern and maybe has another 1 or 2 against Rutgers back home, that might change it, particularly if they lose at Wrigley on Saturday. I think that could really I don't think the completion percentage, the passing yards, anything like that, protect the ball. That's all they're asking him to do. And that was probably the thing Kirk was most disappointed of, and I'm just assuming here, the fact that it's just, you're in the pocket, you don't throw it away, you don't he would rather take the sack than watch the ball drop and watch Tyler Nubin jump on it again, leading to points that ultimately won the game for Minnesota. I think the interceptions are rough, but at least it's a mini punt, like if it's going downfield, you know what I mean? I think fumbling behind the line of scrimmage and turning that over, that's the death nail. And in a 12-10 game, it certainly turned out that way. So I think if Deacon keeps protecting the ball, that's kind of the barometer of you're not doing anything to hurt the team more than like low completion percentages and things like that.
He basically said that in the post game we ran. I remember we ran a soundbite. Like, he didn't say these are my words that Deacon cost him the game, but he said, "You have 3 turnovers, you're not going to win the game." And when I'm reading between the lines, I'm saying, okay, but whose 3 turnovers? Like the fumbles and the pick was kind of a late throw, bad decision, ended the game. So to me, when I read between the lines, I'm like, okay, Deacon did cost the game by those 3 turnovers, and you just can't have that. And Owen, when you said, if he has under 120 yards passing, I almost think that's the game plan. Like a perfect game would be like 200 yards rushing, and Deacon have like 110.
Yeah, Kirk has said it before, and clearly the offense has reflected it this year. He thinks that offensive yardage is the most overrated stat in college football because, again, it goes back to the complimentary thing, and it's USC football last year is an example of the reverse of complimentary football. We'll outscore anybody. We have a transcendently talented quarterback. Our defense doesn't stop a lot of guys, but we can complement this by just outscoring you. And most of the time it works for them. Iowa's got the opposite. Our offense struggles. We've got one of the best defenses in the country and a punter that completely controls field position. Yeah, we'll let that complement that. So I think
I think both teams are like the opposite of because complimentary, you need they have such a bad defense, we have such a bad offense. It's like you need to have a middle ground. If you truly want to do complimentary, and either team.
Compliment, I think, is just assisting where it's needed, right?
Yeah.
Like if everything's great, then you're an elite football team. You don't need to play complimentary football because you're great at everything. Yeah. When you're lacking one spot, you've got to complement that with a little something on the other side.
Offensive yardage is only an overrated stat when you have the best defense in America. If you're 3-5, not overrated anymore.
That's what Socrates said right there. Of course, this is going to be a new venue for Iowa for the first time in 6 years. They will play in a non-football environment going to Wrigley Field. Kirk, raised in Pittsburgh, born near Detroit, certainly a couple big baseball towns there. Spoke a little bit about not getting to watch a lot of baseball during the season, but certainly had some thoughts about the struggles and maybe the downsides of playing in a place like the Friendly Complex.
We already ran that soundbite.
Did we run the baseball sign? Did we?
I got Kirk on Northwestern baseball field. I might not have.
That?
Yeah, I don't have another one, so.
I thought we played the
quarterback saw it.
Yeah, I don't have that in the system, so I must have missed that one.
Fair enough.
Well, anyway.
What did we not play?
The Wrigley one. I didn't put it in the system, so that's my bad.
Oh, okay.
It's all good.
He's not happy about it. Well, I guess we talked about the fact that you've got the dugout tunnels, which is like single file, and you've got, they're going to line up on the same sideline. And so we talked about just like the struggles with substitutions, and for the referees, like the clock management of like having to deal with the clock because you're going to be, I'm not sure exactly the logistic, but I'm imagining that just there's some sort of divide there.
He did reference sign stealing.
Did reference sign stealing. Didn't have a whole lot to say.
So they're both on the same sideline. That's So if there's like this is going to get too in the weeds, but if there's like a foul call, you just go to one side of the field. They're going to have to go like all the way down to like talk to them. That's going to be an interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe that's probably. I don't know. It's going to be a mess. They played at Yankee Stadium. We've got video at least, right? We've got.
Yeah, I can play that. I just can't
play the soundbite. Let's revisit the Pinstripe Bowl here, Yankee Stadium, 2017. Footage from Mia O'Brien back in the day. Got to go up near the family, obviously, Jersey and Ithaca grad. I talked to her today, telling her that we had the footage. She said this is top 5 coldest things she's had to shoot.
Wow.
You had all the throwbacks. Nate Stanley to Noah Fan. I think this was near the end of the first half, right? There was a late touchdown. T.J. Hawkinson right there. And boy, you thought Torrey Taylor was a good punter. Remember the Nate Stanley pooch punt era, guys? It was fantastic. Nick Easley down there getting that. Noah Fant, Matt Vandenberg. Remember pooch punts, guys?
Let's see if
punting is offense. Nate Stanley will show you a sophomore playing back there, and then the defense had a really great outing. You got Parker Hesse in there, walk-on zone.
A lot of future NFL tight ends in this game.
Boy,
holy smokes!
Josh Jackson right there, and yeah, so that was a big Iowa win. Of course, one of 3 bowl games for Nate Stanley that he won. Him and Ricky Stanzi, the 2 Iowa quarterbacks to win 3 bowl games there. So that was the experience of playing in one of the most legendary ballparks in Major League Baseball. Now they get to go to Wrigley Field. How about before we go to break here, since we didn't have the soundbite, all 3 of us been to Wrigley at some point or another? You've never been to Wrigley?
Never been. I've been outside of it. I had lunch with a friend at a Shake Shack this summer outside of Wrigley.
I love a good Shake Shack. No, I went to a Yankees-Cubs game there that went 18 innings. It was a nightmare because like 5 innings after 9, like they didn't do anything, and it was freezing. Me O'Brien.
I went to an April 2013 game in the bleachers. It was 39 degrees and sleeting. 0 out of 10. I'd rather sit through 18 innings.
If you're going to Wrigley, don't go before middle May.
Yeah,
middle May or June.
I also went to one in 2000. It was against the Reds when Griffey was with the Reds.
Oh wow!
Griffey homered, Sosa homered, Pokey Reese hit a grand slam.
Hello,
it was the best day ever, and that was my first game.
2004 Red Sox World Champion Pokey Reese, by the way. Anyway,
we got an interesting question actually before we go to break from Hair Trigger. If Kirk stays around, do you think John Budmeier's the OC after season, or do they actually look for someone?
John's the reason Cade and Deacon are here. I think that'd be.
I think off camera, Mitch, you made that prediction like at the beginning of the season.
I did that like second episode.
Oh, you did it on there? Okay, I can't remember.
Last year, and that John was probably waiting. I feel like John is sticking around for a reason.
Huh.
That'd be my thought. But again, like.
I agree.
If there's a scenario where Kirk leaves and the whole regime goes, then does the whole plan change? I don't know.
I think the whole plan changes if Kirk goes, but if Kirk stays, I think it'd be someone from when the system owned, like you said.
Yeah. I don't know enough about John to really be able to speculate on that. I don't know his background as well as like Mitch does, but
he's OC at Colorado State before he came to Iowa.
It seems like he'd be a good fit for it one way or another. But yeah, I do think that if Kirk was not there, I think that they would maybe he might still be the OC, but I think they'd take a little bit more of a wide look across some different guys. I haven't read much yet on. There's a lot of people speculating about OC candidates that I was going to bring in, but. Yeah, I think that we cast a little bit wider net in the interview process if it's not Kirk.
I think the interview, because they have to look. But if it's Kirk Ferentz at the helm, I couldn't imagine them going out and getting someone splashy or someone who totally different offense than what we already run.
Chuck Long.
He was an OC.
Yeah.
He was an OC. He'd been a head coach. Was it San Diego State head coach? Something like that?
Yeah.
I believe that's right, yeah.
We'll see. Still got to go through Northwestern and Rutgers and Illinois and Nebraska and a bowl game and maybe a trip to Indy. We'll get to our Big Ten picks for the week after this.
Better sleep means better morning. Start your morning waking up on a Restonic mattress. At Corcoran Furniture, we are Delaware County's largest Restonic mattress dealer. We have great prices on Ashley Furniture and the largest selection of Restonic mattresses, featuring the marvelous middle, giving you more support where you need it so you can sleep soundly. And it's made for you right here in Iowa. So if it's a crossword, coffee, or the morning news, let Corcoran Furniture help you start your morning off right. Visit Corcoran Furniture in Manchester or shop online at CorcoranFurnitureManchester.com.
All right. Do we have the spreadsheet to look at the damage where we were? This is probably my fault. I didn't even bring picks to the Kinnick Stadium edition of Eye on the Hawks for us to pick last week. It was a bye week
tough
for everybody. Yeah, it would have been really tough. I probably unconsciously realized that was a bad idea, and so we just didn't do it. So we're back to it. We'll pick the full menagerie of games, 7 games.
Right now,
Bring it up right now.
my computer died before I.
Gotcha. You and Owen are still leading, I believe. I'm
That is true.
distantly back. I think I'm like 5 games under 500, something like that.
All
We'll
right.
use this time to remind you that if you're watching this on YouTube, on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel, you can do this all the time. You've gotten to see these wonderful visuals. You got to see Pinstripe Bowl highlights in 2023. What a great thing that was. And of course, this is always available wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can follow us on Twitter at Eye on the Hawks.
Will it be another second? Can I fill with another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't want to dwell too much on Halloween stuff because the old Halloween candy questions are a little bit.
We're already moving on to
overrated, I think.
Christmas. It's November 1st.
I mean, candy corn is good. That's the take that I'll end the day with. What's the scariest movie that you've ever seen in your life? What movie scared you more than any other in your whole life?
I'm not a big scary movie guy.
Chucky.
Either.
But the movie Bats, which is from like late 90s, early 10s, you know what I'm talking. It's just called Bats, but it's about like these genetically modified mutant bats take over like some small town, and just like the only thing I have in common with Bruce Wayne is that I'm scared of bats.
Oh, really?
So that movie is just terrifying to me. I remember watching it as a kid, like just like seeing it on cable and like doing that. Just like, okay, is it scary? Yep, it's the scariest thing I've ever seen. So
I don't even know what movie you're talking about. I thought Chucky was terrifying. All right, I have the standings if you wanted to move to that.
Okay.
I don't have them.
Scary stuff. There we go.
Yeah. I don't have the Expel sheet because it didn't save on me when I
want to give my 2 answers for scary.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Number 1, when I was 6 years old, you guys remember the Ernest movies?
Yeah.
Ernest
Scared Stupid.
was not
Dude,
scary.
that movie is scary still. Okay, I saw that when I was 6. A troll turns children into wooden dolls forever. That's a terrifying concept.
Yeah, as a child, yeah. That'll
when
get
I
you
was
existential.
when I was about 15 or 16 years old, I saw Signs, and I saw like The Late Show with a few friends. I'd lived out in the country, had to drive home in the middle of a cornfield. I was scared out of my mind.
Just water bottles open all around. Spoiler alert for Signs. Signs, I do like.
That's a great movie.
When again, spoilers for a movie that's 20 years old. When the alien walks by in that found footage,
man.
like that scared the crap out of everybody.
That was insane.
That's
great scene in
that's a
scary
fun
movie history.
That's a fun movie.
All right, let's bring him up, Mike.
Okay, so Mitch is 19, 26, and 2, and Owen and I are tied with 23, 22, and 2.
What's
So
the excitement in that? There's no room for a comeback.
no, I mean you put enough games on there. I think we're in every Big Ten game this week.
Yeah.
We do. Starting with
Yeah, we'll start with the
number 1 ranked Ohio State and Rutgers.
And Rutgers, Ohio State, an 18.5-point favorite, lead in the 11 a.m. games on CBS. Ohio State, number 1 in the first edition of the college football playoff rankings that were released yesterday. Rutgers, again, Greg Schiano team, I think they're 6-2. They're tough out coming to Kinnick Stadium next week. Do we think they can do anything against a Buckeyes team that is playing as good as anybody? They have earned that number 1 ranking.
Ohio State is 18.5-point favorites in this one. That's a really interesting line, I feel like.
To Piscataway.
Were you guys surprised they were ranked number 1 in the country last night?
They probably have their best resume. I know Michigan's looked dominant, but like they've beat Penn State, they've beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think that was probably
They're
right call.
really starting, and they've been banged up too.
Boy, I could see this game getting interesting, but yeah, I don't know. I'll say Rutgers will keep it tight.
I go to Ohio State. They've beaten the Pasties pretty good this year. I think they blew out Purdue, and I'm blanking on the other one, but they haven't had much trouble with these.
They're getting healthy. I think that's the key too. So I'll take Ohio State to cover. I really like this Rutgers team. I've liked them from the jump, but this may be the Ohio State really shows anybody who doubts why they're number one. Maybe, and it might be as simple as just winning it 35-14. But I think they're getting healthy, and that's key especially. So I'll take the Buckeyes to cover on the road. Other 11 a.m. game on BTN, Wisconsin, a 9.5-point favorite in Bloomington against Indiana.
Indiana's 2-6 right now. Their 2 wins, 41-7. They beat Indiana State, and Akron they beat by 2.
They have played tough some games. Ohio State and Penn State, it was a close game. I think it was 38. Penn State ended up 1 by 9, I believe.
Yep. Ohio State, the season opener, lost by 20. So a little bit closer. I like Wisconsin.
So do I.
All right.
Even though I just said that they kept getting close. I mean,
it could be. I could see it being like a 10 to 12 point win. Yeah, but I think they could cover.
What do you got, Mitch?
Man, I want to give Indiana a point. There's a lot of big road favorites this week in the Big Ten. I'm gonna say. I'm going to take Indiana to cover. I think they can keep it within a touchdown.
Okay.
Trying to make up some points there.
I'm at the point where I got to throw some Hail Marys, so to speak. Nebraska heading to East Lansing, a Michigan State team, I believe, still looking for its first Big Ten win. They are 3-point dogs at home against the Cornhuskers. That's an 11 a.m. kick on FS1.
How much? Just 3 points?
Just 3 points.
Oh, Lord. Michigan State's lost 6 games in a row. Their only wins this year against Central Michigan and Richmond. Nebraska's won, 5 of their last 6, I think, right now? Yeah, 5 of the last 6 games.
First 3-game winning streak since 2016, I read.
Wow.
Nebraska.
Matt Rule doing some things.
They figured out their identity, yeah.
It's one of those weird games where, I feel like Scott Frost each year almost had this point where it's like, you just assume, all right, this is it. Now they're going to run away with it. So this maybe is that one game where it's like Michigan State comes out and for whatever reason beats Nebraska, but I don't know. I think Nebraska's got to cover.
I'm going to go Nebraska too. Michigan State probably should have a Big Ten win against Rutgers. They fumbled the bag there. They could have beaten Iowa.
Really close to being Iowa, yeah.
Coming close to a lot outside of Michigan. They've came close a few times, but I do think Nebraska's defense is pretty good.
Yeah, they just have the same problem they've been dealing with all year is just turning the ball over. They've changed quarterbacks, but they still, and then, Minnesota, as they do, has a seventh string, bless you, running back going in run for 200 against them last week. Yeah, I'll take Nebraska to cover. I would not be shocked if we all missed that, though. I think Michigan State could. They show too much flash to lose every game, and maybe this is.
It looks like the easiest game on paper to pick, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
I could see that flipping that way.
Penn State ranked 11th now in the CFP, 9.5-point favorites at Maryland. This is a 2:30 kick on Fox.
Another spread that I'm a little surprised by, just 9.5. Maryland, who started so well, they've lost the last 3. Not blowouts by any stretch. Lost to Ohio State by 20. Illinois lost by 3. Northwestern lost by 6. But Penn State, after losing to Ohio State, I think is going to come out. And they could still. It's a long road there, but could still possibly play their way back into playoff contention. So I like Penn State for sure.
Yeah, I like Penn State here. I kind of puzzled that Maryland sometimes. Sometimes they look like they're actually good, and then they drop one to who they lose to, Northwestern. So, just confusing team all around, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Maryland to cover. I think this is a game. They have an opportunity to win this game at home. I said this a month, 6 weeks ago, that they get to host Penn State and Michigan, and I think they'd had an opportunity to beat one of them, and I think this could be it. I think this is the great thing about Penn State is that they're not forcing a lot of things. They're not a big play offense by design. We saw it against Iowa. Longest play was 19 yards, but they just eat away at you. Maryland, when they're on, and I think at home that can help them be on, can just eat you alive. And if they want to get Penn State in a shootout, and if they can make it work against that defense, that's an opportunity to make this really close, maybe even pull off an upset. So I'll take Maryland. Still has flashes of the Maryland that we have seen. And I picked Penn State to win the East now, but starting to see maybe an opportunity here for Maryland to at least bounced back and showed they still have flashes of what they were through those first 5 games. Illinois hits the road and goes to Minnesota. This is a 2:30 kick on BTN. Gophers 2-point favorites at home against the Fighting Case and Frericks.
I like home field advantage in this one. I think the Gophers could win it by about 10 points or so.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one too. Illinois just always confuses me every week. It seems like this podcast. I'm going to pick Illinois to win, though. I don't have a good reason why. I think they
nearly pulled it off against Wisconsin.
That's true. Yeah, they've come close and I'm not sold with this Minnesota team even after they beat Iowa. There's still a lot of stuff that, their offense
They run the
wasn't
ball
that great.
so well, though, man. I mean, literally, it's Jordan Newman. I think he came in as a DB.
Yeah.
Tyler's brother, and he's a 7th-string running back, and he goes for 200. I mean, you put a dude behind this offensive line and they run. I think Gophers win by 2 scores, so I'll take them to cover. Again, I think that Northwestern loss, just like the Purdue loss last year for Minnesota, boy, come the end of November when they go and play for the Axe, they're going to wonder what if. I really start to think that.
I must watch the Minnesota game. I wasn't overly too impressed with the Iowa game, even though they came out with that victory.
They ran for 150-some yards.
Scored 0 touchdowns. And, the Nebraska game, too. I know it was the first game of the season, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to look at the first game of the season.
It is.
For anybody. I mean, it's just a wild one. So there's one more 2:30 game, of course, that we'll get to after this. Purdue, a 32.5-point dog on the road at number 3 Michigan. Does that say Purdue's favored by 32.5?
Oh, it does.
Oh boy, Mike.
Whoopsies.
Just put $1 on it. Put $1. Watch the juice run. Michigan's ranked number 3. They might be the best team in college football, though. I think they can cover at home, despite all the outside noise with sign stealing and who is at CMU and anything like that.
Yep.
Michigan is so damn good.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I'm going with Michigan. I don't think Purdue can. It's a huge spread, but Michigan, and now
Michigan can cover it.
They can cover it, and you could say that throughout this whole thing, I'm sure Harbaugh is going to have them motivated. It's us against the world, even though it's like you guys cheated, allegedly. But I could see that happening because football players are always looking for reasons to be slighted.
Yeah, and they've got it this year. I mean, Michigan is a team that not a lot of people are liking right now, just in terms of their personalities they have there and some of the trouble they've got in over the last 6 months or so. But man, I mean, 32 sounds like a big number, but they've scored 45 plus in their last 4 games. I mean, they just blow teams out by a lot. They have not had a close game this year. I mean, their closest is 25 points, I think, over Bowling Green. I mean, they just kick the crap out of people.
They play Minnesota and Michigan State back to back, right?
Michigan?
They're close to it. Yeah.
A couple weeks apart. Indiana was between them.
Yeah, so they what'd they score against Indiana?
52.
He scored 150. More
Pretty
than
sure Indiana
points.
scored first 2 in that game.
Yeah. Boy.
Also, Purdue played Ohio State, and I think Michigan is better than Ohio State, and Ohio State handled them pretty well.
153
They're
points
averaging
over the last 3
50
games.
points.
Yeah, Michigan.
And they've played pretty solid.
You're on Michigan or Purdue?
Michigan, yeah.
Okay.
And then we come to the Peacock, 2:30, Iowa, 5-point favorite versus Northwestern at Wrigley Field. Chicago's Big Ten team against Northwestern.
I got him.
There's so many.
You got him.
There's so many Iowa grads in Chicago. There's so many people I know that are so hyped going. We finally used the soundboard. It took us to November, but we ran the soundboard. Thoughts on the Hawkeyes, everything they've dealt with. They're coming off the bye week, unplugged from football from Thursday to Sunday. Everything happening off the field, though. Can the Hawkeyes get it together and get a win against the Northwestern team that we have well documented now is pretty darn good, all things considered.
Talk about a massive spread. I mean, I'm just kidding.
That historic over-under, I think, is up to 31 now.
Yeah, it moved up to 31. We were talking about how it was 29 on the Hawks, 29 and a half. I'm going to go Northwestern here. I think Iowa wins, but I think it's close, just like every other game this season. What's going to be different? I don't see Iowa's offense doing much different. Northwestern's offense could, can it move against Iowa's defense? I think there's a better chance of that. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I think it's going to be within 3 points. So I'll pick Northwestern to cover, Iowa to win by 3.
The over-under right now, ESPN at least says that it's 30.5. So
it's
drop
dropping
back down again possibly. Let me run you through.
We'll check FanDuel.
And let me run you through each game that Northwestern plays this year. Loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win,
You saying there's a pattern?
Due for a loss, baby. And I really think that Iowa's going to come out and have a little something coming here after the way that the Minnesota game ended. I could see them really wreaking havoc defensively on Northwestern. I could almost see 2 defensive touchdowns happening. Curtis Fader in his feature where he previewed the next opponent, I think he said that they averaged giving up like 5 sacks a game or something like that. I think they could really make life miserable for Northwestern's offense and could really do a lot against them. So I do think that I was going to cover that 5-point spread.
It is 5.5 on FanDuel, over under 31.5. So the numbers really moving. Money line minus 205 for those of you that care about numbers in the betting side. I'm going to take Iowa minus 5 too. I think kind of the same thing. I think it's a good matchup for Iowa's defense. I think maybe Cooper finds that punt return touchdown that was taken away, maybe a pick or two. I know Sullivan's done a good job protecting the ball, but this is a team that's going to be well rested, and I think that's going to be key. A team that was just at the end of that Minnesota game, win or lose, half that defense was limping around, moving slow. They just looked beat up physically and mentally, and I think the best thing they could do, and Deontay Craig told me about this too last week, of just like unplugging and getting away, and 8 weeks of playing Big Ten football and prepping for opponents on top of going to class, on top of being a human being in a college environment, like just to unplug and relax a little bit and now be able to just wind up and go into November. I think, and an Iowa statement's different than other statements, so like maybe it's a 21-3 win or something like that. That's a statement. I think they get November started out on a good note before they come home against Rutgers. So Iowa minus the 5 to go to what would be 7-2 and keep those Big Ten West title hopes alive. Final thoughts before we log off here, and we got a newscast at this desk in 55 minutes.
Yeah, one thing I had down in my notes, but I forgot to bring them. But it was in the game notes that Iowa sent out. I believe Kirk Ferentz is 8-10 or 8-11 after the bye week, which is kind of surprisingly bad, don't you think? Hair Trigger brought that up again. Thank you for that. But I just remembered reading that it was one of the third or fourth notes, and I'm like, dang, that does not make sense, because you'd think that when he has time to prepare for a team,
or just time to rest up,
I wonder
when those bye weeks are too. If there's a pattern of like when they're later in the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be. I didn't break it down too much, but that's what I wanted to bring up.
Wild thing to think about. Anything from you as we wrap?
Yeah, I mean, I heard a stat the other week just about Power 5 teams overall after the bye week don't typically perform very well. But I think that if Iowa loses this game, I think it really could be a spiral to the end of the season. I think that would put this team in a really bad place if they lose this game to Northwestern. But I do have some confidence they're going to come out and show something, especially with everything surrounding the program this week.
We'll see what happens there Tuesday, or 2:30 Saturday. We'll talk to everybody else on Tuesday. We'll get back to hearing from players again. That was a one-week thing where we don't hear from players. I'm guessing we'll get assistant coaches on Wednesday as well on Zoom. Again, Twitter, Eye on the Hawks, YouTube, and Instagram, Iowa's News Now. Thanks to everybody who's been watching, subscribing, supporting every which way from the start, or if you've joined mid-season. Been awesome to have the support. We'll recap everything Sunday at noon with the live stream. We'll see you then on Eye on the Hawks.